There's one word that describes the intelligence that was needed for this, and it's significant. This was an intelligence operation. What the Israelis had to do was map out where the IRGC senior commanders lived, do what's called a pattern of life study on them. So see what their normal routine was, so that they could then plan their potential attacks against the individuals, making sure that it was a bespoke attack for what the pattern of activity showed that that individual did. And therefore, it would have taken a lot of time to do this. It would have taken agents on the ground as well as um, uh, Israeli special forces on the ground, and it would have taken a lot of signals intelligence analysis. You're looking at how these individuals communicate and what they do, so that Israel could look at some form of trigger to make sure that they get them into the place that they want them before they then attack them with the device that they wanted to attack them with. And looking at the fidelity of what they did, they tracked people down to, in some cases, individual rooms within their house. In other places, where they all gathered together after coming together for a meeting. So it was clear they knew the behavior of these individuals, and you knew what would stimulate the behavior of these individuals, and that's what allowed the attacks to be so successful. Reading through the report, the Israelis, had prepared, a complete range of different weapons. There's from the conventional weapon, but a precision attack missile that could be dropped from a drone or an aircraft. That will then attack into a building from the outside. I remember many years ago with the military, we used to fire TLAM missiles in one particular operation. That's the land attack cruise missile, and I'm talking 20, 30 years ago. You could decide which window of a building it would fly into, and you could dial the explosives to have an effect in that particular room. But to do that, you had to know who was behind that window and who was using that room and when they were there. Technology has come on even further since then. So that was some form of airdrop missile was one way of doing it. A second attack method was a drone flown locally with the ability to fly it, at the particular room. But then they'd have had to know what the construction of the building was to see whether they could attack through a window. They'd have to know whether the windows were open or attack through a wall, and have the warhead needed to do that. And I understand they'd also prepared booby traps for different places. So they'd have to have understood a way of getting a booby trap into the room and know that their target was in the room at the same time, or if that was in a car or a path or somewhere else. Very, very sophisticated, and something that would have taken a huge intelligence operation to get the fidelity that you need to do this. The IRGC, the Iranians have a very hierarchically structured military force. So everyone defers to the top, and they get the decisions from the top down. So if you're attacking in at somewhere else, the reaction will come from the senior person. They will tell everyone else what to do. If you take the senior person out just before you put the attack in, then when people are asking for direction, that then leads to confusion. And it takes time before the Iranian system would have the deputy step in and go, oh my goodness, right, my boss has been taken out. I therefore have to step in, because people are nervous about taking that responsibility unless someone has passed it to them. And that's what happened here. The Israelis took the decision-making element away from the IRGC, just as they then went in for an attack, sowing further confusion, which meant that it was much safer for their um, uh, capabilities. And I use capabilities because they both attacked from the air, and it's clear they had special forces and agents operating on the ground for those capabilities to carry out the attack and then melt away into the background without being properly detected. The planning of the attack would have been happening for years and years and years. The intelligence operation it'll have taken years to set up. Now, as they run the intelligence operation, and they're starting to look at the principal targets, and some of these targets had only just been appointed into the IRGC. So, because their principals had been taken out beforehand. Um, but it shows the depth that the Israelis had, and they were monitoring everyone that they could. Now, they'll do a lot of that electronically. They'll do a lot of that through agents who are reporting where things are going. They'll build that pattern of life study up without necessarily knowing what they're going to do with it. And then, whenever they've decided what they're going to do with it, and they're going to carry out this assassination attempt, it would have been part of the overall planning for the actions that they were taking to attack the Iranian command and control and their nuclear structures. That would have been done as contingency planning, so it could have been on the shelf for many years. And the contingency plans sit there and they just refine them as the situation changes, as new information comes in, and whenever there's the decision made to go for it, and that would have been a political decision out of Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet. The decision made to go for it, you then go into your fine detail and your fine refining. But you can do that if you've got all of the intelligence gathering processes set up and you're continuously monitoring and continuously watching what's going on, which again shows the level of sophistication. But it takes an investment in an awful lot of assets to be able to do that. It's clear the Israelis had. I'd argue that Iran has had the capability to attack Israel's command because what Israel did to Iran and the IRGC, Iran did to Israel through Hamas with the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October. Hamas had quite clearly understood how Israel was gathering its intelligence. They fed Israeli intelligence what they wanted to see and what they wanted to hear about cooperation and everything else over a long period of time, masking their true intent of preparing for the mass attack that went in. And therefore, we've seen it on both sides. Iran has always been the number one enemy for Israel. They have created and supported so many other organizations who just want to see the destruction of Israel. That's Israel's number one intelligence target. So they have been gathering information on them ever since Israel has existed. That's why they've managed to refine it down and look at this because Iran is an existential threat and always has been an existential threat to Israel. Iran probably felt secure in that they thought that they had control over their population and control over those in the military. They've been proven time after time after time that this is not the case. We had the attack on the Iranian uh, nuclear centrifuges many years ago with the Stuxnet virus. That required agents on the ground and an understanding. Iran didn't seem to learn the lessons from that. We had senior IRGC commanders killed by the Americans and by the Israelis over the last few years. Again, that will have required agents on the ground and the intelligence that's there. Iran will have thought that by capturing one or two agents or people they accuse of being agents and killing them, they will have sent a message out and no one else will have done it. They didn't realize the level of sophistication that the Israeli intelligence, Mossad, and other elements have managed to achieve. And I think Iran is now reeling with shock. But it's the same as we have done with the likes of the IRA and loyalist terrorist organizations in Northern Ireland. They didn't realize the level of penetration because it had taken many years to set up. And you can almost second guess everything that the decision makers are going to do because you're getting that information fed through to you.